tensions on the Russia-Ukraine border have been escalating dramatically in recent weeks. The mass mobilization of Russian troops on the Ukraine border, as well as the sporadic outbreaks of violence between Russia-backed rebels in the contested Donbass region and Ukrainian troops, have pushed both countries to the verge of open conflict. And, following the US diplomatic intervention, Moscow has pulled back, and the violence has ceased, for the time being. On December 23, 2021, during the annual live-streamed news conference with Russian federal, regional, and international media at the Moscow Manege, Russia's President, Vladimir Putin, has stated that the country does not want to be in a conflict with Ukraine or the West. But they want security guarantees from the West, as well as guarantees that Ukraine, as well as the other former Soviet republics, will never be admitted to NATO. Also, he demanded that NATO should not expand eastward any further. President Putin has warned the West not to cross Russia's red lines when it comes to Ukraine. This implies that Russia wants NATO to stop military operations in Eastern Europe, which would entail withdrawing combat troops from Poland and the Baltic republics of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, as well as not deploying missiles in countries like Poland and Romania. In brief, it wants NATO to switch back to its pre-1997 borders. Russia has accused the West of attempting to turn Ukraine anti-Russian by arming it with modern weapons and brainwashing its citizens. The United Kingdom is also set to assist Ukraine in the construction of 2 naval bases, Okhotsk on the Black Sea and Berdyansk on the Sea of Azov. US anti-tank Javelin missiles have also been delivered to Ukraine. And the Navy has received 2 US Coast Guard patrol boats. For the United States and the European Union, Ukraine serves as a vital barrier between Russia and the West. And, as tensions with Russia rise, they are more determined than ever to keep Ukraine out of Russian hands. On the other hand, Putin believes that Ukraine, a 44 million-person country that was previously a part of the Soviet Union, should be subservient to Russia. The two countries share a 1,200-mile border as well as cultural and linguistic bonds. Russia believes that this is essential for Russian and regional security. Even, Putin wrote an article on the historical unity of Russians and Ukrainians, in which he argued that both nations are one people. But instead of siding with Russia, Ukraine has shifted its focus to the West. He accused Ukraine. Putin also accused Ukraine of violating its commitments under the 2015 so-called Minsk Agreement, which was intended to halt fighting between Ukrainian and pro-Russian forces in its eastern Donbass region and of refusing to meet with representatives of 2 breakaway regions there. But Ukrainians believe Putin overplays. Even the Ukraine's current president, Volodymyr Zelensky, has resisted Russia's attempts to expand its influence in the area. For years, Russian-backed separatists and Ukrainian troops have fought skirmishes along Ukraine's eastern border, due to which officials from the United States and the European Union have stated that if Russia launches military action along the Ukraine border, it will face unprecedented sanctions. Previously, sanctions were imposed on Russia by the US and its European allies after Russia invaded Crimea in 2014. And pro-Russian troops established themselves in parts of Ukraine's Donetsk and Luhansk regions. This year, in the 17th of December 2021, Russia published a draft security treaty that it wanted to sign with the West. The draft's key element was a Western vow that Ukraine would not join NATO, and the organization would reduce its deployments in Central and Eastern Europe. Moscow said it was ready to send a negotiator to begin talks with the US. But the US has stated that there are elements in the Russian draft that Moscow is aware will be acceptable to the West, and NATO has its own demands of Russia. However, the Russian suggestions have not been dismissed outright. But, if Ukraine is invaded, or, if the situation is de-escalated by a Russian-American agreement, there will be a worldwide repercussions, with ramifications for India. While the global geopolitical structure has been rapidly changing in the recent years, and the relations between the two Cold War adversaries, Russia and the United States, have not improved yet. However, both US and Russia maintain friendly relations with India. The relationship between India and the United States is motivated by shared democratic values and common interests on a wide range of other critical issues. While both Russia and India refer to their relationship as a special and privileged strategic partnership, so both Russia and the United States are important partners to India. And at present, India is maintaining an equitable strategic partnership with both countries. However, the question is, what should be India's response in Ukraine-Russia situation? Russian invasion of Ukraine would put India under pressure to choose between the Western alliance and Russia. If India sides with Russia, it could face Kartsa sanctions for purchasing S-400 missile defense systems. And this will be difficult for India to consider, because its armed forces will be reliant on Russian spares and equipment for the foreseeable future. In addition to the critical importance of maintaining a balance in relations with two most important partners, India must be mindful of the fact that it cannot support another country's coercive military occupation of another country's territory. Because, in its east and west, India is also subjected to such illegal occupation. China maintains constant pressure on India, not only in Ladakh, but also in the eastern sector, where China claims 93,000 square kilometers of Arunachal Pradesh. And, on the western front, Pakistan is applying the same pressure to India. For India, territorial integrity and sovereignty are sacred. And, despite its good relations with Russia, it has not recognized Abkhazia and South Ossetia's independence from Georgia as a result of the military conflict between Russia and Georgia in August 2008. Similarly, despite India's extensive and diverse relations with the United States, India has refused to recognize Kosovo, which declared independence from Serbia in February 2008. And the same approach should be taken this time. India should not support any country's coercive military occupation of another country's territory. So far, India has advocated for political and diplomatic solutions that protect the legitimate interests of all countries in the region and beyond, and ensure long-term peace and stability. Peaceful dialogue is the only way forward for a long-term solution that is acceptable to everyone. Overall, India should maintain a balanced, neutral stance in the Ukraine-Russia situation. Indeed, India, as a rising global power, should encourage both Russia and the US to try to reach a mutually acceptable agreement at the upcoming meeting in Geneva next month. Because conflict between Russia and Ukraine would be in no one's best interests.